will explore the field of science communication and its connection to mental health stigma. We will begin with an introduction to science communication, explain why it is important in regards to mental illness, and explore initial principles of effective writing and approaches to destigmatization. Before continuing the course, take a couple of minutes to consider what scientific communication means. Scientific communication refers to the way that scientists and journalists disseminate scientific information to the public, and more generally, how we talk about scientific issues to each other. In the context of this course, we are considering science journalism in particular, and how we may be able to effectively reduce the stigma of mental illness through this form of science communication. With the advancement of technology and online platforms, it is very easy for people to label themselves as science journalists because they can produce and share content with an audience online. Thus, it is more important now than ever before that science journalists focus exclusively on effective science communication so as to not blur the lines between the authenticity of both science and journalism. So why is science journalism important? Science journalism conveys reporting about science to the public. The aim is to translate detailed, specific, jargon-laden language of scientists into a form that non-scientists can understand and appreciate, while ultimately delivering accurate information. Such communication determines the way that people receive and then further express scientific topics, issues, and debates of tremendous gravity. Further, the way people receive these issues ultimately affects what future research is conducted through funding sources. When science is not effectively communicated between researchers, scientists, professionals, and the public, we contribute to the perpetuation of existing stigmas and the negative consequences associated with them. Poor communication regarding mental illness jeopardizes mental health and acts as a barrier for people with mental disorders to access treatment, jobs, housing, and relationships. This lack of access compromises their ability to attend to their physical health and depletes instrumental, social, and economic resources. Why is it imperative to focus on science communication as a way to reduce mental health stigma? To answer this, we must understand the intersectionality that is inherent between communication and stigma. Communication and stigma are dynamically connected. Intersectionality enables us to link social identities and how they cross with systems of oppression. Essentially, the intersection between science communication and mental health stigma refers to the way that stigma is socially constructed through communication. Understanding this point of intersection allows us to see how stigmatized communication can influence our actions. For example, in the school setting, teachers often contribute significantly to the perpetuation of stigma in the classroom. Research shows that a teacher's reaction to a child with ADHD, for example, shapes the student's academic achievement, behavior, self-esteem, and peer relationships. Essentially, the way a teacher responds to and communicates with this child's mental illness has a lasting impact on multiple aspects of his or her life. Research indicates that communication is implicitly needed to achieve mental health, to build social relationships, and be an active participant in the world and its many publics. Communicating about science is especially difficult because it often presents information that goes against the audience's previously held beliefs. It does not work to simply present facts and statistics in well-founded research and expect people to change their minds accordingly. Science journalism offers a multifaceted approach to discussing mental illness and aiding in the effective removal of existing stigmas. The environment determines disability, not the person. As a result, people have an obligation to create an environment that is functional for everyone. Thus, it is the responsibility of journalists, given their reach to and influence on readers, to do their part in creating an environment that positively impacts people with a mental illness. One thing to consider would be Aristotle's ethos, logos, and pathos. Ethos is the credibility of the writer or speaker. Convincing an audience of your credibility is not as easy as simply relying on your degree of expertise on the subject. Ethos is conveyed primarily through tone and style and is greatly affected by one's integrity and honesty. A crucial point of ethos is dealing with increasing mistrust of people towards institutions and thus credibility. Effective mental health communication can open the door to a smoother approach in establishing empathy between the public and health institutions. In order to mitigate this general distrust of mainstream doctors, you will need to gain ethos through finding common ground and showing that you care about them personally. In order to assert expertise and ensure people trust in the source of information, coupled with the information itself, communicators must portray strength of moral character and build upon the appeal of logos. So, what are the ways that students can ensure people trust in the source of information? Students can ensure source credibility by providing the most current information on the topic, citing authors, providing balanced, evidence-based opinions, maintaining that the new information fits what is already established, ensuring reliability in the publisher and source as a whole, being transparent and admitting when you make a mistake or do not know something. Logos, the clarity and logic of the reasoning behind the message being portrayed. Logos refers to the ability to support the claim with effective and proper evidence. In effectively appealing to reason, the communicator is able to gain the credibility necessary to construct a valid argument and strengthen the tie between what is logical and what is morally sound. Appealing to logos gives the audience a concrete understanding of the information as well as a tangible impact of the issue at hand. Pathos, the use of narrative techniques to connect the audience to the author. Pathos refers to both the emotional and imaginative impact of messaging, as well as the values inherent in the communicator's voice. This can be used to connect ethos and logos, bundling logic with trust in a way that effectively communicates the scientific message. In order to make an effective argument, communicators should address all three of these components. In transferring Aristotle's rhetorical appeals to science communication, we can bridge the gap between scientific research surrounding mental illness and the way people then receive, perceive, and express this information. When it comes to mental health, storytelling is a great way to incorporate all three of these rhetorical appeals. After watching this video, think about what is the purpose of this video in relation to science communication and mental illness stigma. The takeaway from this video is the point that narrative can change behavior by changing our brain chemistry. By tapping into our capacity to be empathetic, effective storytelling connects each of us as social creatures to the emotive appeal of scientific discovery. Author Randy Olson speaks to the importance of implementing an and, but, therefore, or ABT formula for communicating science. The dissemination of scientific knowledge usually follows an and procession. Instead, we need an understanding of the basic elements of story, the narrative structures that our brains are all but hardwired to look for. The ABT approach incorporates the elements introduced in the video. Momentum gives way to conflict, which culminates in some sort of resolution. When science is told in the form of a story, the public is captivated and more likely to understand and appreciate the information. Science is full of vexing questions, conflict, dead ends, insights, and the occasional thrilling leap, and as such is a story well told. Science journalism is essentially storytelling about the environment. So, what are the crucial elements that underpin stories? Let's look to Gustav Freytag's illustration of the dramatic arc. The exposition or the introduction, the rising action or the question, the climax or the conflict, the falling action, and the denouement or the resolution. The story will add meaning to bare statistics, ultimately narrating scientific discourse as opposed to merely presenting scientific data.